Good morning. Good morning. It is so good to see you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. Welcome to all of our newcomers, the people who are here visiting us for the very first time. It is great to have you here. Maybe you're here for the second or third or sixth time. Great to have you here. Nice to have you back. And all of you folks who've been coming here forever, thank you for coming here forever. You are certainly the foundation and bedrock of this congregation. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. It is so good to have you here. My name is Joan Montagnes, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving you, this congregation, whoever you are, this morning as minister. Together, we make this space holy. It's a precious thing. I have a bunch of announcements today. This excites me. Usually I dread a bunch of announcements because it just goes on and on, but we haven't had a bunch of announcements for a long time, and this is an indication that our church is coming back to life after the long shutdown. So first of all, we've got the restorative practice listening circles. We know that when we listen to one another with our open hearts, we may not always agree or see eye to eye, but we will understand each other more deeply. The Board of Trustees and I invite you to join in a restorative listening process to unveil the experiences, thoughts, and feelings about Daniel Basson's departure from our staff. This isn't going to be a time for blame or right or wrong or good or bad. It will be, though, a time to listen to the variety of experiences that we have and a time for you to share your experience and be deeply heard. Trained facilitators will hold circles of 6 to 8 people in covenanted space for these conversations. Who are the facilitators? We got some of them here. There's Bonnie Collins and Doug Sherman, and Alan Atkinson is another one, and Chuck Battaglia, and Fran Manley, and who am I forgetting? Hi, Carol. Those are our 6 facilitators. If you're interested in joining the process of healing, restoration, and transformation, please let me know by tomorrow. You can email me, or there is a sign up on the religious education table in the parish hall, and you can sign up after church. It'd be great to have you participate in this. The other thing I want to tell you about is a membership class. Everything you ever wanted to know about Unitarianism, Universalism, and Unitarian Universalism, but we're afraid to ask. I'll be leading a 4-session introductory course to explore our faith, its principles, theology, and our congregation. Lots of open discussion time, a great way to make new friends, whether you're visiting for the very first time or you are a long-time member. This course is for you. It is a prerequisite for church membership, but if you aren't interested in formally joining the church, it's still a great thing to attend. You're invited to be part of the conversation because you don't have to be a member to enjoy our church. You can participate in everything. All seekers are welcome. These classes are going to be held on Tuesday nights, starting this Tuesday, so October 12, 19, 26, and we'll decide what we're doing on the 2nd because the 2nd is, of course, Election Day. And maybe we'll postpone for a week or just move upstairs if you've already voted. The class will make a decision about that. I want to tell you, because it didn't make print, all of these flowers and decorations are in honor of the children and the youth of this congregation and all the volunteers who support the children and youth ministry, and they've been brought to you by Lisa Peterangelo, who is our religious education director. And I want to also tell you, direct you to all of the announcements in your order of service, especially the one about mental health first aid. It would be a great thing to get that thing as a hit and that we get it to go off to. And my last announcement, you will be happy to hear, is about Celebration Sunday. It's October. Woo! What's October? It's gearing up for Pledge Drive, right? Celebration Sunday, October 31st. Treats, treats, treats. So come on in on October 31st, which is a Sunday. We'll have all sorts of goodie bags and celebration, and it's going to be a fabulous time. Please think about your pledge before then and what you might want to put on that pledge card that you will receive on that day and you can hand in that day on Pledge Drive, Sunday, October 31st. Before we say we head off into worship, let's greet all the folks who are out there visiting us through Zoom. So good to have you with us as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome to one and all. Take a deep breath in. And now, let's worship.
We gather together as a community of seekers to honor the interdependence of life, to respect the dignity of all, and to honor the land we walk humbly upon. Friends, let us acknowledge that we live on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee people, the original nations of this land, who continue to call for justice and self-determination. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Please join us in our chalice lighting. The words are in your order of service. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, once upon a time, there was a little girl who went to school, and she didn't quite look like everybody else. And so the kids in the classroom would say, "Where are you from? Is your mom from here? Is your dad from there?" And the little girl didn't know. So she went home and asked her uncle. She said, "Uncle, where am I from?" After all, he knew everything, right? Well, he shut his eyes and listened like he was listening to his heart. And he opened them again and said, You are from the towering maples, free and green, from hunters and gatherers, from the wide Niagara River that feeds our land and brings us corn and beans and squash. You are from the hills with the pine trees that tickle the sky's tummy, and blue jays that cry, and brown bear who prowls for berries. You are from the ancestors who built this land, even when they were oppressed and poisoned, for the color of their skin, and for the faith in their hearts. You are from the grandmothers who sing the song of our language, even when it would be crushed. But, Uncle, said the little girl, Uncle, where am I from? And the uncle smiled and said, you want a place? You're from here, my heart. You're from my love and from the love of all of those who went before us. You are from the dream that was sung by people who lived under the Big Dipper, by stories that were told under the light of the Northern Star. You are from all of us and from this land. And the little girl listened. She shut her eyes, listened to her heart, and she said, yeah, I am.
Every week, we take a good portion of our Sunday morning offering and give it away to a social justice cause outside our church walls. This month, as we explore the theme of cultivating relationships, we are cultivating a relationship with Kenmore Alliance Church by supporting their shelterless ministry. The ministers of the Kenmore Alliance Shelterless Ministry go out to people who call Buffalo streets their home and minister to them by providing food, water, clothing, toiletries, and other necessities. To support our Share the Plate ministry, you can use PayPal by going to our website, www.buffalouu.org, and clicking on the blue Donate button. Or you can send a check by mail to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo, 695 Elmwood Ave, Buffalo, New York, 14222. You can also arrange a regular automatic deposit with your bank. If yours is a gift to our Share the Plate ministry, please write SHARE on the memo line, and it will be shared between the Shelterless Ministry and the church operating budget. If yours is a welcome gift to our congregation, please write Pledge 2021 on the memo line. Either way, please write UUCB on the important line, and we will do the bookkeeping. Our generosity arises from our spiritual experience of interdependence with neighbor, friend, and stranger. So let the collection be bounteous. Long before the world was created, there was an island floating in the sky upon which the sky people lived. They lived quietly and happily. No one ever died or was born or experienced sadness. However, one day, one of the sky women realized she was going to give birth to twins. She told her husband, who flew into a rage. In the center of the island, there was a tree which gave light to the entire island since the sun hadn't been created yet. He tore up this tree, creating a huge hole in the middle of the island. The woman was curious, so she peered into the hole. Far below, she could see the waters that covered the earth. At that moment, her husband pushed her. She fell through the hole, tumbling toward the waters below. Water animals already existed on the earth: loon, big turtle, geese, muskrat, and little toad. Far below the floating island, the geese saw the sky woman fall. Just before she reached the waters, they caught her on their backs and brought her to the other animals. Determined to help the woman, they dove into the water to get mud from the bottom of the seas. One after another, the animals tried and failed. Finally, little Toad tried, and when he reappeared, his mouth was full of mud. The animals took it and spread it on the back of the big turtle. The mud began to grow and grow and grow until it became the size of North America. Then the woman stepped onto the land. She sprinkled dust into the air and created the stars, the moon, and the sun.
By a river or stream, listen for key tones in the rushing waters. Allow your voice to blend with the sounds that you hear. I invite you all to perform this piece together now. We will start by finding a comfortable seated position and simply listening. Listening, as Oliveros writes, for the key tones from the rushing waters. Music begins with deep listening, with awareness, with silence. You might not at first hear any tones, but then listen to the noises as well, for they are beautiful in their own way. Latch on to whatever you hear, and then, slowly, as you continue breathing and listening, begin to lift up your voice so that it blends with the sounds that you hear. You breathe in And on the exhale, perhaps some noise escapes. Maybe a breath sound, like a shh, or maybe a tone, hummed, whistled, or vocalized. Gently, but without fear. You do not have to sound continuously, but can rest as you feel, so that you can listen to the voices of others and the continued gentle murmuring of the stream. You are listening. And you respond by sounding. You are of the river. We all are of the river. Listen to the river. Listen for the key tones in the rushing waters. Allow your voice to blend with the sounds that you hear. I will now be quiet and allow you to sound a minute more until the river fades away.
Thomas King, a writer from the Cherokee Nation, begins his book, The Inconvenient Indian, with the following paragraph. He writes, in October 1492, Christopher Columbus came ashore somewhere in the Caribbean, a part of the world geography which Europeans were unfamiliar. And as a consequence, he was given credit for discovering all of the Americas. If you're the cranky sort, you might argue that Columbus didn't discover anything, that he simply ran aground on an unexpected landmass and stumbled across a babel of nations. But he gets the credit. And why not? After all, it's one of history's jobs to allocate credit. If Columbus hadn't picked up the award, it would have been given to somebody else. So, for better or for worse, Christopher Columbus. I don't know why I am stumbling on that name. So Columbus, for better or for worse, gets the credit for discovering America because, after all, it is a great story. It even rhymes. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And all the other realities about this land and its people fade into the murky depths of myth and forgetfulness, or are simply denied through policy and treaty. Columbus gets the credit, and we get a holiday. Win-win. This is a big weekend, a long weekend, a weekend to celebrate the discovery of this land and all its blessings. And you know, Americans have found this a good weekend for a long time. Columbus Day celebrations in the United States are almost as old as the nation itself. The earliest known Columbus Day, this was a surprise to me, was held on October 12, 1792, the tricentennial of the day those three little ships, the Pinta, Nina, and Santa Maria, bobbed their ways across ferocious seas and finally set anchor in the azure blue lagoons of the Bahamas. That's our story, that's our history, and we're sticking to it, especially since we get a long weekend out of it. But you know, as well as I do, that there is a danger in telling a single story, a single history. There's a danger in believing a single story, believing that one version of history is immutable and objective truth. After all, each of the nations in the so-called Babel of nations that Columbus stumbled upon would tell you a different story about this land. For that matter, each of the people in each of those nations would probably tell you a different story about this land. Each of the people would tell you a different story about where they came from. Now, I'll admit that this morning I had to do some creative imagining about what a person indigenous to this land might say about what they were from. And in that imagining, I was well aware that I am not and cannot tell another person's story. But I can ask, as what we all can ask. What do we know about this land and what it was like before European settlement, colonization? What did it sound like, smell like, taste like? How many stars were in the sky? Was the water of Niagara Falls already crashing like thunder? Were the great horned owls flying silently through the night? How blue was the sky before jets began leaving clouds in their wake? What color was the snowmelt? What sound? The sap running? And what of the mushrooms blasting their ways through the forest floor, lightning strikes turning tall trees black? And what did the coyotes sing? What do we know about this land? And what was it like before European settlers arrived? In 1492, Columbus may have sailed the ocean blue, But since the 1990s, a growing number of states have begun to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day, a holiday to honor the culture and history of the people who are from this land and the people who lived in this land before Columbus' arrival and their descendants unto this day. For obvious reasons, many Indigenous people find Columbus Day is a controversial holiday at best, perhaps even a flat-out offensive and oppressive holiday. For many Indigenous people, Columbus is viewed not as a heroic discoverer, but rather as a brutal colonizer. His arrival led to the forceful taking of their land, stealing of land, and paved the way for loss of Indigenous ways of life, destructive policies, and genocide. And I just want to stop here and note in my mind anyway that I've been going north a lot to Canada because that's where my family is, and I've been noticing that all of the churches there have little flags tied around their property, little ribbons. And those ribbons are memorials to each of the children who have been recently discovered in mass graves outside the residential schools. These are schools that were as much penitentiaries as anything else. Children were stolen from their families, Indigenous families, put in these schools where the children died, and the families knew nothing about it. They didn't hear such things. They didn't know what happened to their children. The destruction of Indigenous ways of life and genocide. And one more thing, as I said, a number of states are beginning to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day, and New York State is not one of those. Many people like us, groups of people who are largely, though not entirely, from immigrant stock, many groups like us are beginning every gathering with a territorial acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that we are gathering on soil that is the traditional land of a particular group of Indigenous people. An acknowledgement that the land was taken by force and through one injustice after another. You know, it seems like a little thing, doesn't it? It seems like a really little thing, this territorial acknowledgement, to use tiny words to admit an enormous wrong. It might feel like an insincere apology. Way too little, far too late. At best, a little white confession to a massive white lie. The words of the territorial acknowledgement may indeed be tiny. Those ribbons may indeed be tiny, but the words are a start. The ribbons are a start, a place to begin the transformation. Words are the building blocks of stories, and we use stories to create our reality. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. We gather upon the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee people, the original people of this land who continue to call for justice and self-determination. This land is a crust of rock floating on a core of molten lava. This land was created by loons, geese, beaver, muskrat, toads on the back of a giant turtle. This land is alive and of generous spirit. We gather upon the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee people the original nations of this land who continue to call for justice and self-determination. How shall we live in that reality, in that story? How shall we live in that reality in this new political geography we call the state of New York? I just want to stop here for a second again and manage whatever fragility might be in our worship space, whatever unease or guilt might be present here, whatever irritation or defensiveness might be rising up. Let's just take a moment to take stock, little emotional inventory. How are you feeling? Okay, so this is the thing. Remember why we say Black Lives Matter? We say Black Lives Matter and not all lives matter, because all lives don't matter and won't matter until Black Lives Matter. The territorial acknowledgement of the land is something like that. All we're doing is telling a better story. A story that places the people who are normally placed as an afterthought, normally cast in supporting roles, normally treated like people who are in the way. The territorial acknowledgement tells a different story, a story that places Indigenous people at the beginning and in the center. This isn't about guilt or blame or shame. There's no need for discomfort in telling this story. This is not a zero-sum game. There is enough for all, and every one of us is still a precious, precious child of the universe. The different story that places Indigenous people in the center is a good story. It's a widening of the heart, of life, of experience, of understanding, of justice. This is not about giving up your place in the family of things. It is, though, about asking yourself, where am I from? Really, where are you from? What trees, animals, waters, ancestors, history flow through your veins and sit in your bones? Listen. Listen deeply to all the rivers that flow together to make you, you. What do you feel, taste, touch, see, smell? This is about becoming larger, becoming filled with gratitude and awe and grace. We gather upon the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee people, the original inhabitants of this land, the original nations of this place, who continue to call for justice and self-determination. Yes. And we are blessed by this space in which we live. We are blessed for the days of our lives so that we can strive to live out our common principles to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our world, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of truly living in a beloved community on this land. Let's join in singing Return Again, as printed in your order of service, and I believe we're going to sing it once in unison and how many times in a round?
Twice.
Twice in a round.
So the first time we do the round, this side will lead, and then that they will be followed by the other side in the round. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul.
Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn.
Let's join our hearts and minds in a quiet moment of prayer, meditation, and reflection. Let us be centered in this, our home, remembering that it is our home, but not just ours. This land we live on, this water we drink, this air we breathe, these forests that give us their healing green, these flowers that give us their beauty and fragrance, these fields that give us their daily bread, these stars that show us our place, the wilderness and our tame backyards and the view from the window, the soil that lies beneath this church, all of it, our home. Remember the ancestors who have lived on this land, generation on generation, and in their living have shaped our home and made it what it is. We have inherited their choices. We remember our neighbors living today on this land. And in our living together, we shape our home together and make it what it will be. Our descendants will inherit our choices. We gather here to remember that this is our home, but not just ours. Today, we especially hold in our hearts Hope and Dick Krause. Their niece, Jennifer Ann Krause, passed away this week. Jenny was the flower bearer in Hope and Dick's wedding. And now let us welcome into this sanctuary of compassion, memory, accountability, and hope the names of all of our loved ones suffering in sorrow and celebrating in joy, each name a breath and each breath a prayer. The breath of nature is upon us. The spirit of life is within us. The community of love is among us. So be it. Blessed be. And let the church say, Amen. Let's join in singing this new hymn, I think, for most of us. Hallelujah.
Please join us now in extinguishing our chalice. The words are in your order of service. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
No matter how weak or frightened you may feel, you have gifts that can make a difference in the world. In the days that are to come, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, and to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected, and remember, you are blessed. You are a blessing, and above all else, you are not alone. You are never alone. So be it, blessed be. And let the church say, Amen.